Hello and welcome. I am Sylva. There's no doubt that Nigeria is diversifying the sources of its revenue, but even at that, crude oil still remains the major source of its wealth. Now, expectedly, the country's fortunes are impacted by the vagaries of the international oil market, including the politics of the international oil trade. But few could have imagined that an unseen enemy, far deadlier than the war of production and pricing, would emerge and all but cripple the sector. Today, our focus is on 6 years of the Buhari administration, halfway into its second term, and the score in the oil and gas sector. Timipre Sylva, a former governor of Bayelsa State, is the Minister of State Petroleum Resources. He joins me on the program. Minister, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Syria.
Right. There's such a lot that you talk about when it comes to oil and gas. But basically, this is the source of Nigeria's wealth. And it's not been going too well in recent years, has it?
Well, I would say not very well. Like you said, compounded by the problems of COVID-19. It's not been going very well, but I can say that it's a very hopeful time for us as well.
Okay. But one of the first things that would come to mind as soon as you mention petroleum resources, and that's speaking about the generality of Nigerians. It's all about pump price, appropriate pump price, subsidy, no subsidy. And so we'd like to start from that premise and say, is there really a subsidy on the pump price of petrol?
I must say there is subsidy. I mean, there is no denying the fact that there is subsidy. For me, the question is this subsidy sustainable? And it is very clear that we cannot sustain it. This has been realized by many governments before now. Almost every government from the time of President Babangida have been trying to remove subsidy. But unfortunately, we've not been able to remove subsidy. But it is very clear to me that without removal of subsidy, our economy will continue to stand on one leg. And then you ask yourself, who are we really subsidizing? That, I believe, is nearest to what you just the question you asked. Who are we subsidizing? Are we actually subsidizing the common man? Or we are subsidizing the elite? Because I say that because kerosene, which is actually the preferred fuel of the common man, that is used for cooking and so on. They use it for stoves, they use it to burn their firewood. It's been deregulated a long time ago. Diesel, which is also the other fuel closest to the common man, which is used for trucks. Trucks are the preferred vehicles to move foodstuff and things across the country. Closest to the common man. They've been deregulated a long time ago. But PMS, petrol, which is actually the fuel of the elite, used in cars, in your car, for example, and my car, has defied deregulation. So now, added to that, who is subsidy benefiting? When they talked about subsidy thieves and so on, I remember there was a time, Nigeria, there are always cliches that come in vogue from time to time. I remember we were talking of subsidy fuel, subsidy fraud, subsidy thieves. No common man was part of those thieves. The people who are making a lot of money from subsidy are not the common man. They are the rich that are making more money from subsidy. So now you ask yourself, who are we really subsidizing? Unfortunately, when you talk about subsidy, it is the common man that troops to the streets. But I think that as a country, we will need subsidy to move on, because the money that we spend on subsidy from both sides, when I say both sides, you are subsidizing the pump at the pump. That means you buy the product for a certain cost and you sell at a lower cost at the pump. Then at the other end, from the foreign exchange side, you are also subsidizing the foreign exchange, because you are giving the foreign exchange at a lower rate for those who want to import the product. So the country is losing from both sides, like burning the candle from both ends. And then you see at the end of every year, you are spending trillions subsidizing petrol. Trillions that can be mobilized to developmental projects.
Okay. But that seems to be the bone of contention here, that it's a subsidy, as you say, that can be channeled to other development projects. But over years, even as you acknowledge that many governments had tried to remove the subsidy, albeit with little success, there have been all kinds of things. That was the first time Nigerians got to embrace the word palliatives, cushioning effects. And, over time, some form of withdrawal was done with the promise that the money saved from such withdrawals would be pumped into other things. But Nigerians would say, so how far all these years, is there anything to show for it that those attempts had yielded anything? So what is the guarantee that if that happens now, there'll be a difference?
Nigerians will be very unfair if they say that those attempts have not yielded anything. If for nothing, remember the PTF days. PTF was funded by savings from the increase at the pump price at that time. That money was channeled into a special fund that was properly managed. And every Nigerian saw the impact that PTF made. Nobody can deny it. Wherever you live in this country, PTF must have touched your life at that time. That tells you exactly how much money can be freed from subsidy. It was not even the complete removal of subsidy at that time. It was just a partial increase that yielded all that fund that was available at that time to PTF. So what we are saying is that now if you free up that kind of fund, or even more than that kind of fund, especially with a prudent president like President Muhammadu Buhari, you can deploy a lot of development in Nigeria.
Okay. So conclusively, we can admit that this withdrawal will take place under this administration, which would lead us to the next question of what is...
Well, I don't want you to conclude on me.
All right, so
yes, we actually would like to, but you have also mentioned something very important.
Right.
Mentioned the issue of palliatives,
right,
for example. We are not unmindful of the fact that it's going to come with some pain. And that's why we're looking at other opportunities to at least bring some succor to the average Nigerian.
Okay.
We are looking at introducing first an alternative to PMS. You must be aware of what we are doing already. You must have been following the news. We want to introduce auto gas as a fuel for our cars. Gas is a cheaper fuel, so we believe that that is going to at least alleviate the problems of our people occasioned by any increase. And then, of course, we are also going to do some direct alleviation of the problems that will be occasioned by the subsidy removal. So all this is being put in place before we will finally announce the regulation.
So at least there is a roadmap to that. So the question would be, what's the appropriate price of petrol per litre, the pump price? You know, we have heard people suggest 450
if I can tell you that from here,
yes,
Cyril, then it means that the price will not be market driven.
Okay.
So what we are saying is that we just want market to drive the price. The market can drive the price down, the market can drive the price up. But it is market that we want to determine what the price will be.
What if it drives the price to 500 naira per litre?
It is not very likely that it's going to drive it to, because we have looked at it. You see, definitely we see that it will not be of that kind of range. It is not going to be that kind of range at all. But I don't want to now say that this is what the price might likely look like if you take out subsidy.
Okay, we'll leave the issue of petrol pricing for now and return to it later, because there are one or two issues we'd still like to take on that. But you mentioned something about alternatives, and you talked about gas. Now, this administration says it's a gas decade. So let's start by finding out what of the latest attempts at improving the situation, since many would say Nigeria is more a gas country than a petrol country. And for this, I'm referring to the Ajaokuta, Kaduna, Kanu gas project. And would like to know the update on that so far.
Well, before I come to that, I would like us to remember that a few weeks ago, we laid foundation stone for Train 7 of Bonny LNG, which is, of course, a major gas investment, which was enabled by this administration in the thick of COVID-19. It's actually unprecedented, and I thought that we should always take note of that. Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano pipeline is very much on track. There is no problem at all. It's under construction, and we believe that it is still it's going to be completed within the time of this administration. And let me now go further on that. This piece of infrastructure is one of the most important developmental corridors that is being constructed now. Now, Ajaokuta Kaduna Kano pipeline is going to enable us to take gas from the south all the way through Nigeria to the north. There is already the Herbs line, which takes gas all the way from the south to Lagos, to Benin Republic, to Togo, to Ghana. So now what that does first for the upstream is that it provides a market for the gas that is mostly stranded in the south. So now they produce the gas. Before now they produce the gas, or they don't have market for it, so they cap it. Or they produce it for export only, because there was no way of moving the gas into the hinterland. But now this administration is providing that corridor. And now what that does is that it is providing energy for development across Nigeria. Energy that was not available. So now anybody from anywhere in Nigeria can tie into the AKK line and get gas to power his factory, get gas to power his gas-based industry, get gas to even power a fertilizer plant anywhere in Nigeria. So it is enabling the producer to be able to produce, because there is now market for his gas. And also in the process, it will enable a lot of business and development on that corridor all the way to Kano. So this is a very important infrastructure, and we are very happy that it is happening in the time of this administration, of our administration, of the President Buhari administration.
One thing most people would ask is, going by the experiences with petroleum products and pipelines, what are the lessons that have been learned, and what have you put in place on such a major project to avoid the pitfalls of petrol pipelines?
Well, the problem in Nigeria, historically things change. Before now, You lay a pipeline from the south to Kaduna, there was no problem because Nigerians did not think about vandalizing pipelines. You know that that is a new crime in Nigeria. It was not so when we were younger. You lay a pipeline and people allow the pipeline to be. But crime too evolves, just like the country evolves. Now, crime has evolved to the extent that people have decided to now vandalize pipelines. So now, in addition to building a pipeline, you must also include some security for that pipeline, which was not there before, which is part of the lessons learned now. Before now, we didn't know that you have to build in a mechanism for securing the pipeline that you have laid. But now, we have to always bear in mind that some mechanism for securing the pipeline must be put in place. But in addition to that, you must also understand the difference, the essential difference between the AKK and the product pipelines. AKK is a gas pipeline. And gas, as a commodity, is different from the products. Nobody can go in there and take gas and then think you can just pilfer. It's going to cause a lot of problems. So I think that even the thieves, even the vandals, know that they cannot go near the gas pipeline as they will go near the product pipeline. So it's a different kind of pipeline, but of course, the lesson that we have learned over the years in Nigeria is that a security mechanism has to be built in to secure pipelines as well.
Now, all of this would, of course, tie into expansion program for LPG. I'm also looking at the integrated gas facility in Edo State. Well, just give us an update on that as well.
Well, that has been commissioned already. That brings in a little bit more LPG into the country. What we're trying to do is try to encourage the utilization of LPG in Nigeria. LPG is not supposed to be an elite commodity, but unfortunately, it is so in Nigeria. And that's why the gas penetration in Nigeria is one of the lowest, lower than even some small countries around us. It is quite low because the average rural person in Nigeria doesn't use gas to cook. The average, even people living in peri-urban areas do not use gas. So gas is kind of restricted to the elites in the cities. And of course, that has now led to a lot of problems because there's a lot of deforestation going on because the rural people depend on firewood to cook. And that is not sustainable in the light of global climate change and so on. It is not sustainable. We need to preserve our forests. But what is it that is stopping the average Nigerian from using LPG? It is actually the cost.
Right.
The initial cost outlay to be able to utilize gas is high. In the sense that for you to be able to utilize gas in your home to cook, you need to buy a gas cylinder, which costs something high. I don't know the figure, but something high for the common man. You need to buy a gas stove, cooker stove. And then every time your gas cylinder, anytime your gas finishes, you have to go and you have to fill up the gas cylinder. And to fill up a gas cylinder, you probably need a few thousands. And it can happen at a bad time when you don't have money to fill up your cylinder. So now, the advantage of kerosene over gas now was, look, people can, if you don't have enough money, you can go and buy a half bottle of kerosene. But in this case, you cannot buy a half bottle of gas. So what we want to do is to introduce fractional filling to the extent that you can actually get half a bottle, get 1/4 bottle of gas, and you don't have to even buy the cylinder up front. So you just get a token, so you rent it. So now an average person will set up what you call micro distribution centers across the country. Every area will have a micro distribution area. We have right now mapped about 32,000 micro distribution centers. So now you have a micro distribution center near your residence. You go there, you pay a little bit of a token to be part of that system so they can give you a cylinder. So when you go to the cylinder comes with a device on it. The cylinder is filled up. But you can buy at home, you can buy 200 naira worth of gas if that's what you can afford. And the system will dispense 200 naira worth of gas to you. So you cook. If the 200 naira worth of gas finishes, you can now pay for another gas, another 300 naira. So it makes it easier and more affordable for Nigerians. So we're trying to introduce this so that Nigerians will be able to use gas to cook. And of course, we have to also introduce a lot of safety elements as well.
Right, because that's where we're going next with the safety issues.
Yeah, we are very mindful of that.
Given the fact that many gas depots of recent have gone up with
because
explosions.
also what was happening was because there was actually no safety incorporated into the gas dispensing system. For example, people, like recently, we had an explosion in Kaduna. Very avoidable. It was just somebody trying to decant gas. I mean, when you decant gas in a way that is not proper, and there is any flame, it's exposed to any kind of flame, then of course you are looking for disaster. But now there will be a proper framework put in place to ensure that these things are prevented. And also, we are also going to see how we can change the kind of cylinders that we use. First, a lot of substandard cylinders were being imported into the country. People don't realize in Nigeria that a gas cylinder has a manufacture date and an expiry date. So a lot of expired cylinders were also brought into the country. So all that we're looking at, and we want to move from metal cylinders to fiberglass cylinders. So now the fiberglass cylinder will not explode like that on people. So we are looking at all the safety considerations, because if we want to get our people to begin to use gas, we have to make sure that they are safe using gas. So all that will be incorporated. And we want to see how we can introduce gas to the common man so that it will at least help the gas penetration of Nigeria.
Part of the issues you talk about when it comes to gas and for more general use, like you mentioned earlier, you're thinking of vehicles that will utilize gas. But again, this has to come with a lot of funds. We're talking about conversions. There are speculations on how much that would cost this country, and I'm not talking about government, just the country as a whole, to modify vehicles. There's no target date, and there's a lot more.
No, there would be a target date. Look, let's look at it this way. It's something new, we agree. But the two have to grow hand in hand. The conversion of the cars on one hand, and the dispensing stations on the other. Now, if you just convert vehicles to utilize auto gas for driving, and you do not have the dispensing stations enabled so that they can go to those dispensing stations to fill up, then the converted cars will be hanging in the air. People will convert their cars, they don't have gas to fill up. So now what government is doing is to enable both. What we want to do is to bring in about 1 million conversion kits to kickstart the whole process. And that is government's role. So we bring 1 million kits, and then we convert 1 million cars across Nigeria. Now, when those 1 million cars are converted, at the same time, the government has also provided 250 billion naira to support the development of gas dispensing stations across Nigeria. It is a federal bank, central bank loan system that you can access to set up gas dispensing stations. So that what we want to do is, when these 1 million cars are converted, they can have ready stations to go to fill up. If you have a system where 1 million cars have been converted, and there are dispensing stations already across Nigeria for converted vehicles, then we have kickstarted it. The system, then people, there will be testimonies. Somebody will say, oh, look, you know, I used to spend 100,000 on fueling my vehicle in a month. Since I converted this vehicle, I only spend 30,000. Somebody else will want to go and convert his car. This time he goes on his own because it is now an enabled business. And then, of course, it will now, we expect that it will take a life of its own after government has given this kickstart.
Okay. Now, even as the country searches for other forms of revenue away from oil and gas still produces a big chunk of it. And maximizing the benefits from this resource, this administration says it's been working on. And I'm looking at the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Amendment Act 2019. How has this, will this contribute to increased revenue for the state?
No, definitely it has contributed to increased revenue. And of course, you know, what we are looking for is not just to overtax the producer. It must be a win-win. We want the producer to pay appropriate taxes, and we also want to incentivize the producer, the government, to incentivize the producer. So the Deep Offshore Amendment Act has been passed, and we have seen the benefit. What that did for us, at least, is to kickstart that, to signal that change. You know, oil was first produced in 1958 in Nigeria. And the Petroleum Act 1969 has been the only act governing the oil sector from then. No, and we have just carried on. And most of these laws have become obsolete. You know, for example, they tell you that payment for an economic tree is 50 kobo per tree, for example. That was probably a lot of money then, but it's no longer now. So these laws needed to be upgraded in the light of present-day realities. So now the process was on. So now we will go into PIB, which will also bring in the Deep Offshore Amendment Act, and then now make sure that it will be a win-win for both producer and us as a government.
Well, speaking of the PIB, the National Assembly says it's poised to finally pass this bill, which has been one of the most controversial issues in Nigeria. And at one point in time, no one was quite clear about what was in the National Assembly, what came from the government. And so today people say, well, which of the PIBs are they passing? And what is the guarantee that this bill, as it is now, that's almost set to be passed, will go through in the life of this administration?
Well, we are very hopeful because we've been engaging the National Assembly, and I must say that the National Assembly has been very wonderful in the discharge of their duties. And they have assured us that it will be passed, and I believe it will be passed very soon. The difference between this PIB and past efforts is that it's a product of a lot of engagement between stakeholders in the industry. Before now, I think what happened was they drafted the PIB and sent to the National Assembly. Then stakeholders went to the National Assembly and started lobbying, which is a democratic process. People started lobbying, and then, of course, they start injecting their own interest into the bill. And sometimes the bill that you sent in became unrecognizable by the time it comes out. But in this case, what we did differently was that we engaged with stakeholders up front, agreed and disagreed extensively. So the bill that we are able to send to the National Assembly is more or less reflective of an agreed position. We agreed from the very beginning that, look, we cannot all agree, because we as government, we are looking at it from one perspective. You as investors, you are looking at it from a profit perspective. We cannot agree on all points. If we agree on all points, then it will not be a bill. So let us just narrow the gaps as much as possible so that at least all of us are happy. We as government are happy and also crying in a little way. You as investor, you are also happy and crying some way. Then it will be a win-win bill. And that was why we were able to come together and send a win-win bill to the National Assembly.
Minister, how have you resolved the numerous, quarrels, if you like, between host communities and the big producers, and allegations that the big producers, the government is sometimes kowtowed into going the way of the major producers at the detriment of the communities? How do you respond to that?
Well, let me take this. When you say there is a problem, there's always a problem, and that's what the PIB even seeks to resolve. For example, before now, big producers, as you call them, will have what you call MOUs signed with the communities. And MOUs are not actionable documents. They are not, strictly speaking, binding legal instruments. So they sign MOUs, and at the end of the day, the MOU is not executed. It's not, they don't do the jobs contained in the MOU. The host communities begin to clamor because the MOU that has been signed has not been executed. Now, when you talk about the government side, there is a partnership between government and these IOCs. Government owns 60% of the partnership. In many cases, the investors, the IOCs, have 40%. So if you have an MOU that has agreed to spend R1 billion, 60% of that is charged to the government side. So, of course, government will be interested in what the MOUs say. But what we are now saying is that, look, MOUs are not actionable. Right. They are not legal documents. And that is why we have brought it into the law. To now say in the law that a certain percentage of the operational cost of the IOC, of the partnership, will be spent in developing the community. It is no longer a matter of MOUs now signed. It is a matter of law for the oil companies to spend a certain amount of their operational cost on the development of the host communities. So going forward, after the PIB, I believe that we'll have better times in the host communities.
On assumption of office, you inherited huge sums under the cash calls. Inherited that, and this led to you setting up negotiation to clear those debts, which the NNPC has been paying over the years. Could you tell us?
Yeah, in fact, the cash call issue was a big issue. But, thanks to President Buhari, what he did was, look, because it's our investment. We have to secure our investment first. If we want to get something from the investment has to take place. So if you don't pay cash calls and the investment grind to a halt, then you have killed the cow that was producing the milk. So first, we must ensure that the cow that is producing the milk is fed so that it can continue to produce the milk for the country. So what the president did was to ensure that some cargoes were ring-fenced and set aside for payment of cash calls. So it became easier to manage. Since the federal government has said, okay, look, we are mindful of the fact that cash calls need to be paid, we need to make sure that the cow that we are milking is in good health. So that fund was made available. And of course, you can see now that the clamor and the talk about cash call have completely reduced.
All right, while we at it, let's briefly go back to the issues of production levels and the vagaries, as we said at the beginning, and the politics, the international market. How have these played out with this administration?
Yeah, you know, when we came in, it was not the best of time. It was not at all. We came in at a time when oil prices were really at a downward trend after a lot of highs. And that led to even a recession initially because all the budget parameters were negated. And of course, coming further upwards, we've now met COVID-19. COVID-19 wiped out everything. In fact, oil prices went into negative territory. That means in some areas, in some places, people were paying others to come and lift their crude because the crude now became a problem. You cannot have an infinite storage, and you cannot also stop some of the production because stopping the production, you look at the cost of restarting it, and you say, look, it is better to keep it running so that we don't have to look at the cost of restarting this production. So instead, since all of your storages are full, you now say, look, please, can anybody come and take the crude? I'll pay you money. That was where we were at the beginning of COVID-19. It was really bad. So, of course, OPEC went into overdrive. We went into production cuts and unprecedented cuts to reduce the supply to the market. And we have been able to achieve some increase in the price. Now, where that hot sauce is that, yes, we have gained from the price side, but we have also lost on the production side because the volumes that we are producing have been curtailed by the OPEC cuts.
Well, the public hardly understands that. For some time, the prices looked as if they were shoring up, and this always translates to harder times. And it's an irony, isn't it?
No. Well, you see, let's put it this way. One, yes, the prices go up, but on the other hand, our production levels are also not going up because of the cuts. So if, for example, you are producing 2 million barrels per day, and today you are producing 1.5 million barrels per day because of OPEC cuts that have been agreed and you are complying to, then you see that your gains will not really translate to a lot more money in the system. And then, of course, there are other factors as well.
Well, you lost some of your biggest markets during the peak of the pandemic, at least in this part of the world. You lost quite a number of your...
Of course, yeah.
So how have you consolidated on the few you still have?
No. The whole idea is to keep your market, at least the ones that you have, you keep running those markets, and we are managing them very well.
That's the question of, now back to mainstream petrol, pump price and all that. What's the state of the refineries? There's been a lot on the matter of refineries. I did say we'd come back to this issue later.
Well, refineries, you know that we've made some progress. What we inherited was that all the 3 refineries were down. Port Harcourt refinery was down, Kaduna was down, Warri was down. Today, I'm sure you are aware that Port Harcourt, the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt has kicked off. Warri refinery and Kaduna are next. We are going to also start the rehabilitation of Warri refinery and Kaduna Refinery. We're ready to go to FEC very soon to get that approval.
Right. Minister, what do you say to some citizens who say the cost of these, this maintenance turnaround of these refineries does not justify that investment, and that why spend so much money? If in the past, there were attempts to carry out turnaround maintenance of these refineries, and going by the results, they're saying today that it is not expedient to do that, but the government is going ahead. What do you say to those questions?
Well, everybody's an expert when it comes to refinery. It's unfortunate, but you see, for me, I work with the experts. I work with a lot of technically competent people and with consultants. And if the consultants and the technical people have come up with a figure to fix this refinery, I have no basis to argue with them. I always say that, look, the best presidents Nigeria never had are Babas. Because I remember very well as governor, when I was elected as governor in Bayelsa State, I went to a barber's shop and I was having a haircut. And the barber was advising me and was saying, look, when you get in there, it's easy to develop the state. Very easy. He doesn't know why people can't get it. The reason he said, look, you get about 8 billion every month. There are only 8 local governments in Bayelsa State. What you should do, Governor, when you go, is that concentrate. Just every month, you look at one local government and pump in the 8 billion into one local government. By the next month, put in another 8 billion into the other local government. In 8 months, you have put 8 billion in the 8 local governments, and people will see the difference. So you see, for him, this is the solution. So the problem is, people will always say this, but are they experts? People will say, refineries, why are you doing this? Are they the experts? Or are they arguing with the experts? Are they arguing with the Bureau of Public Procurement that are looked into the whole, all the costs? I said, this is the appropriate cost for this. And if I've got the approval of all these arms, it's not just me that sits down and puts a figure. It is not the GMD of NNPC that sits down in his office and puts down a figure. It's a chain of people that look at this and come up with and say, okay, this is it. They go, they do all the market, they come up with so many, and then they are able to come up with a figure. So is it the man on the street that is telling me to put all 8 billion in the one local government every time? Is it the man I should listen to? So the fact is, yes, I know that a few people have been saying this. In fact, my friend Dilo Menaye also became an expert in refinery rehabilitation. The last time I checked, he was not an expert. So you find out that this is not something that I really want to worry too much about. Are we doing the right thing? I believe we are doing the right thing. Okay. And on the matter of the oil and the impact on the people, you saw sometimes when oil prices go up, the impact on the people, I'm sure you mean on the pump price. Yes. We have explained this over and over again. Now, what is refinery? What are you refining? You are refining crude oil. Right. So if the crude oil price, which is the feedstock that you are refining, goes up, then of course the price of the product will also go up because it is the crude oil that you are refining. So when the crude oil price goes up, then the feedstock that you are refining will go up. That means the product that you are refining to the price will go up. So we say that the product price, the price of product, follow the price of crude oil. That's why when crude oil price goes up, you will see everywhere in the world it is the same thing. When crude oil prices go up, then of course the ordinary man will feel it on the streets. That's why the average person in America will not like crude oil prices to go up. So it is normal. But here, it is only here in Nigeria that we want to see how we can eat our cake and still have it.
All right, Minister. But then how far with private investment in refining capacity?
No, you see, when you talk about private investment in refining capacity, it is also related again to subsidy and deregulation. Cyril, if you are an investor and I ask you to bring billions of dollars, invest it, refine your product, build a refinery, produce your product, and sell it at a subsidized price. After selling it at a subsidized price, then you go back to government, you are now queuing up to get a refund, which may or may not come as at when due. Would you want to invest? No investor will want to come in this kind of structure, because you want to be able to recover your investment. A situation where the product price is subsidized, no investor will come. But if you allow market prices, people will do their numbers and they will come and invest. You will see an exponential growth of refining capacity. Why have none of the IOCs invested in refineries in Nigeria? Because they cannot be selling at a subsidized rate and then now going back to go and collect maybe from, I don't know, PF or somewhere, go collect the difference, or go to PPPROA and collect the difference. It's not workable. That is why if you are talking about improving refining capacity, or even your refinery is working properly, then you must deregulate so that the refineries can run commercially. But if you are in a subsidized regime, the refineries cannot run commercially. You have a situation where Port Harcourt Refinery will spend, let's say, $20 million to refine so number of barrels. And what comes back to the refinery from the sale of the product is probably $15 million, less than even their cost. Now, suddenly, they have to produce again. They need $25 million. They don't have to go to FEC for approval, go to NNPC board for approval. By the time they go through all that approval circuit and comes back, things are running counter. So you find out that it is better for us to run in a deregulated regime so that things can run properly. I thought that the average Nigerian will be ready to pay something extra as long as he can get the fuel and as long as things can run properly.
Two quick issues, Minister, before we round up. That has to, well, in line with the state of refineries, it has to also do with modular refineries. At one point in time, there were just 3. What is the situation now?
No, there are a lot of modular refineries coming up. I can tell you, I mean, we just commissioned one a few months ago, and there are a lot on stream. So, of course, the program has kicked off, and a lot of people are beginning to invest. But, of course, they are mostly investing in production of diesel and kerosene, because these are deregulated products. So it is easier for them. But if you really want to, if you want petrol refineries, then PMS refineries, then you must also deregulate so that more refineries will come in.
Well, in the face of the world moving away from fossil fuels and, moving to cleaner and cheaper modes to drive vehicles and industries, Nigeria still wants to invest in exploration in the northeast.
Well, you see, it is not the end of oil yet. We are only seeing, we all agree that we are towards the end of the age of oil, but this is not the end of oil. And also, even when we get to that end of the age of oil, it is not that oil will no longer be in use. It will still be part of the global energy mix for the foreseeable future and even unforeseeable future. Oil will continue. Oil is not just a fuel for driving. There are a lot of derivatives, and also it's basis of a lot of other sectors. You know, for example, you have the lube sector. People produce lubricants and so on. There are a lot of things that will still be produced from oil.
All right.
So what we are saying is that for us in Nigeria, yes, there is a global energy transition in place. We have now considered that, look, for us, we cannot just transit from here to solar, where we are. Because the rest of the world did not achieve their energy base load on solar. They achieved their energy base load, in most cases, on coal, which is even a bad fuel. And they are still depending in some way on coal to some extent. So what we are saying is, we're not just going to move from oil to solar or to any of these renewables, because we have gas.
Okay.
Gas is in abundance here, so we want to use gas as our bridge, as our transition fuel.
Well, finally, Minister, we've listened to many of those in the thick of this administration and the run of the oil and gas sector. One simple controversy that has played out is that no one really believes the figures regarding the daily consumption of petrol in Nigeria, which leads the government to say some people are doing something, engaging in some sharp practices. It brings us to the question of accountability, transparency, and fighting corruption, especially in the oil and gas sector. How have you performed within this period?
Yeah, you are very correct. I mean, we are the first to agree that the figures we see do not reflect the actual situation. And why is that? We come back again to subsidy. Now, if the product in your country is cheaper than your neighbor, the tendency is for your neighbor to come in here and get cheaper products. So now it appears as if Nigeria is subsidizing the whole of Africa. Now, if I go to my village, and in some villages, as you know, the farm is in the other country, the homestead is in this country. And if I go there and I see that just moving products from this country to the next will give me 5 million naira income. Or maybe in smaller cases, some people just by moving a jerry can, you are making 15,000 on each jerry can. And the man, he's a local rural person, farmer. He moves 3 in a day, he gets 45,000. So the incentive is there because you have made yours cheaper. But if, for example, we are at par, nobody is going to move the product.
Okay.
Well, but before I go, Cyril, I would like to say something. Maybe you want to ask me another question.
Right. Well, just to cap it off. Well,
yeah. The only thing, the thing I want to just say a word about the acquisition of shares in Dangote Refinery.
Okay.
Which, of course, as Nigerians like to know better than the experts. That has really been occasioned by the fact that if you have this kind of strategic commodity, a commodity as strategic as PMS, and a refinery that is being built that is going to be producing almost the total requirement, total need of Nigeria. If not the total need, at least a very substantial need for the consumption in Nigeria. And you allow a private individual to own it up. Okay. It is strategically wrong. As a country, you must take a position in that kind of investment. Because if you don't, any unscrupulous person I'm not saying the man that owns it is unscrupulous, but I'm saying any unscrupulous person that decides to say, okay, he wants to burn this country down,
Okay.
we just hold back supply from his refinery, and then everything will go. So the country needs that strategic investment to be able to hold that position, so that at least you take a position. And it is not just the Dangote refinery. The policy is to take interest in every refinery of a certain size.
All right then. Minister Timipre Sylva, it's been interesting talking to you. We'll have to leave this conversation here for now.
I thought we would be talking for a lot longer.
Well, just on a passing note, can Nigerians expect a harder time regarding petroleum products, or?
No, I would say Nigerians will expect better times.
All right.
Better times.
Thank you very much.
Under President Buhari, we will always have better times.
All right. Thank you for coming, Minister.
Thank you.
Right. And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.